It's been a long few seasons for the Williams team, who are expecting not to be last in the championship coming into 2021 and continuing to build up for 2022. But what if I told you that they are the second most successful F1 team ever, only behind Ferrari and ahead of McLaren? Now you might be wondering, how did they get to where they are? Well, to explain that won't be easy since it has not been a short process. To see where the problems lie, we have to look at the origins of Williams, and I'm not talking about Williams Racing, but Frank Williams Racing Cars, the team that started in 1969 and struggled hard all the way through, and ended up being taken over by Walter Wolf after what started as a shareholder, became a primary owner and ended up pushing Frank off the team and folding 3 years later. Frank had to start from scratch and rejoin the grid for the 1977 season. Fast forward 20 years and Williams have just won their 9th Constructors' Championship with Jacques Villeneuve and Heinz-Harald Frentzen, taking 8 wins in 17 races. But dark clouds were in the horizon. The departure of Renault as a power unit provider left them having to mount a Mechachrome and later Supertech rebadged version of the same engine for 1998 and 1999, and with design genius Adrian Newey leaving for McLaren because of the management taking big decisions behind his back and refusing to integrate him more into the team, led to having basically the same car and aero package. The main sponsor Rothmans also left, and thus the Winfield Williams livery was born. Yes, for 2 years Williams raced with a red car, but many of you didn't know that. A 3rd place in 1998 and 5th in 1999 left the team in a tricky situation after the 2 consecutive World Championships, but it would all change for the early 2000s.
In the 2000 season, Williams had a resurgence of form, and this resurgence was powered by none other than BMW. After their disastrous 1998 season, Williams had signed a contract with BMW to supply the teams with engines for the 2000 season onwards. The BMW E41 was a 3-litre naturally aspirated V10, compliant with the new engine regulations and fitted to the Williams FW22, which was driven by the team's 1999 driver Ralf Schumacher and rookie Jenson Button. In the Williams-BMW partnership's debut in Australia, Schumacher scored a podium finish with 3rd place. He would go on to finish 3rd twice more in Belgium and Italy. This, along with consistent points finishes, earned him 5th place in the drivers' standings. BMW Williams, by virtue of their excellent consistency, managed to place 3rd in the Constructors' Championship, although they only scored 36 points to 2nd place McLaren's 152. For 2001, BMW developed the far more aggressive and powerful P81 V10. This was by far the most powerful engine on the grid, and coupled with Williams' excellent chassis design and drivers Ralf Schumacher and Juan Pablo Montoya, who were well poised to challenge for the championship, or so they thought. Unfortunately, while the BMW P81 was the fastest engine on the grid, it had the unfortunate habit of blowing up, which is mildly inconvenient for a sport based on having working engines. Out of 34 starts in 2001, the Williams team finished 16 of them, 10 finishes for Schumacher and only 6 finishes for Montoya. That's an astonishingly poor 47% finish rate. Despite this, the car showed fantastic pace and won 4 Grand Prix in the team's best season since 1997. Without the unreliability issues, there was little doubt that the FW23 would have been a serious contender. 2002 was again a highly successful year for Williams. The improved P82 model engine was far more reliable, while still being very quick. Unfortunately, the Williams chassis wasn't quite on par with rivals McLaren, or especially the chassis of Ferrari. There was absolutely no resistance to the incredible dominance of the Ferrari of 2002 and its driver Michael Schumacher, who went on to win 11 of the 17 races in the 2002 season and never once finished off the podium. The best Williams could manage was a solitary win for Ralf Schumacher in Malaysia, and 13 podiums for 28 finishes. Williams finished a distant 2nd in the Constructors' Championship, 129 points behind the all-conquering Ferrari. 2003's Williams FW25 got off to a rocky start. Despite the increased reliability of the newly improved P83 engine, the Williams drivers were some way off the front-running pace, and both Montoya and Schumacher complained of downforce issues in the car's design and consistent understeer. However, Michelin developed a new, wider front tyre for Monaco, which would ultimately go on to make the car far more drivable and contribute towards Williams winning the race and dominant 1-2 finishes at both the European and French Grand Prix. Ferrari's tyre manufacturer Bridgestone didn't like this one bit and lodged a protest against the Michelin tyre design after the Hungarian Grand Prix. From there, Williams' form dropped off, and Ferrari overtook them in the Constructors' Championship right at the end of the season, winning the title by 158 points to Williams' 144. This decision caused outrage among members of the Formula 1 paddock, and several people claimed that the FIA had deliberately upheld the Bridgestone protest in order to allow Ferrari to win the championship. As aforementioned, the competitiveness of the Williams car began to drop off in 2004. The FW26 chassis proved fast in pre-season testing, and Juan Pablo Montoya was tipped by many as a title favourite. Unfortunately for Williams, the FW26 was inconsistent and difficult to set up, with the car being outpaced by the Renaults and Bar Hondas, as well as that year's dominant Ferrari. Despite consistent points finishes and even a couple of podiums, the Williams car remained in the upper mid-pack, and the team slumped to 4th in the constructors' standings. Montoya took the team's only victory of the season at the season finale in Brazil. 2005 was a season of further decline for Williams. The FW27 chassis was unable to break out from the mid-pack, scoring just 4 podiums and slumping to a distant 5th in the championship table. Australian driver Mark Webber and his German teammate Nick Heidfeld were regular point scorers, but the car was nowhere near the level of performance that the 2002 and 2003 cars had been. Williams' relationship with BMW was at an all-time low, with BMW believing that their engines were capable of winning championships but were being let down by the poorly developed Williams chassis. Later that year, BMW offered to buy the team outright in the hope of gaining complete control over their Formula 1 operations and run as a constructor, but Frank Williams refused. As a result, BMW chose to buy the rival Sauber team instead for 2006 and end its deal with Williams. Williams now faced an uncertain future as they began to get left behind in a sport that was rapidly changing ahead of them.
After the BMW disaster, Williams switched to Cosworth engines for 2006. Heidfeld opted for joining BMW Sauber, while they took in rookie Nico Rosberg, and alongside Mark Webber, the season started decently, with both drivers scoring points. Rosberg even got the fastest lap, but that Cosworth engine was not the best engine in the grid, and after 20 retirements and their first season without a podium, they realized maybe they had made the wrong move letting BMW go. A switch to Toyota was then announced starting in 2007, and after Webber left for Red Bull, Burtz would replace him, and then Nakajima got the drive for 2008. The season started out promising with a podium for Rosberg, but ultimately the pace was just not there. They were one of the teams to start the early development for the 2009 car, and when it was unveiled, it was one of the few ones to have a double-decker diffuser, which gave a big aero boost. If you look at the end standings though, it's clear to see which driver delivered and which didn't, with Rosberg scoring literally every point for the team that season, dragging them to 7th place. After the announcement that Toyota was leaving the sport, Williams found themselves without a supplier and thus had to go back to Cosworth, who were there mainly to supply the new teams joining for the 2010 season. Needless to say, they weren't the primary choice for any team. 2 years of Cosworth engines with 3 different drivers, one of whom was pretty much a paid driver and not the last one to come, gave them a 6th position for 2010 and a drop to 9th for 2011. 2012 marked a decent increase in pace thanks to the championship-winning Renault RS27 2012 engine and gave them the spectacular 2012 Spanish Grand Prix. One where Pastor Maldonado qualified on the front row, but due to Hamilton being disqualified, the Venezuelan driver got pole position for the next day's race. A blazing start from Alonso put him in the lead, but on lap 25, the surprising pace of the Williams under Maldonado's hand was enough to undercut the Spaniard. He led for the remainder of the race to take the checkered flag and become the 5th different winner in as many races, the first Venezuelan to win a race, and the first win for Williams since 2004. Apart from that though, the 2012 season was pretty dull. They finished 8th with 76 points, and the next year it was worse, 9th and with 5 points. On May 30th, 2013, team principal Frank Williams announced that they would be switching to Mercedes power coming into the 2014 season due to the reputation they had gained in the past few decades, even though the latter years of the V8 era had been a hard battle between them and Renault, but as we all know, it was the right move. For 2014, the drivers would be Felipe Massa coming from Ferrari and Valtteri Bottas, who had debuted the previous season on the FW35, and on the first race of the season, it was quite clear to see which the most powerful power unit was. With 7 out of the first 11 spots being taken by Mercedes-supplied cars, the two Williams were at the back of the top 10, but a first-lap collision put Massa out of the race. Bottas, on the other hand, would make his way through the field and, even after stopping to repair a puncture, managed to finish 5th. The following races would give a handful of points finishes, and from Austria on, the team would step onto the podium on 9 of the remaining 13 races, starting with a pole in said race, the only non-Mercedes driver pole all season, and then the final double podium in Abu Dhabi helped them achieve 3rd position in the championship, the higher that they had finished since 2003. For 2015, they'd keep that 3rd position because, although Ferrari were resurgent, Red Bull started struggling big time, scoring podiums in only 2 of the 19 races contested. how do I say this without causing offense, arrogance of Williams management to keep the doors closed to investors and to manufacture everything in-house was already an outdated model in the late 2000s, and by 2016, the results displayed this clear as day. Instead of making the most out of the two previous results and the prize money that came with them and optimizing the factory, they stuck to their guns and insisted on doing everything themselves. Yes, this is pretty similar to what happened with BMW, and look at the results from the years following. At Active Force India, we're making the most out of every single pound and changing with the times. This is clearly shown in the way they took Williams' position, and an upgraded Red Bull also jumped them. They managed to score a single podium and experienced a 46% drop when compared to 2015 and a 57% when comparing to 2014. The formula was clearly not working. They needed to evolve, but the Williams family didn't see it that way. They saw it as a lack of money. In September 2016, Massa announced he was retiring at the end of the season. This was good news for Williams, as they had a free seat and opted to get billionaire Lawrence Stroll to invest in the team in exchange for a drive for his son, who had just won the Formula 3 championship. It was a win-win situation, but the hole was being dug deeper and deeper. Then came the sudden announcement that champion Nico Rosberg was retiring, and that sent Mercedes scrapping to find a suitable replacement. And who better for the job than Valtteri Bottas, managed by Toto Wolff. It seemed like a no-brainer to rescue the team from what was clearly a sinking ship and see how well he could perform. Therefore, Massa was brought back on a one-year deal. The 2017 regulations freed aerodynamic development, with cars being less restrictive. Wide wings were back, angle wings too, along with shark fins and a bigger rule-free area around the dashboards, which Williams failed to take full advantage of, and their spot on the sport was clear as day. They were an A-team running on B-team money, which meant that they weren't getting enough financial aid from their father team, but their budget was getting smaller and smaller because of underperformance, so there was no way they could make everything in-house on sponsorship and prize money alone. 2017 was not a good year, and although they still finished 5th, their point tally was 40% smaller than 2016. 2018 was the straw that broke the camel's back though. With them still sticking to the we can do it alone mentality, they hired Russian Sergei Sirotkin to replace outgoing Mazda. Although there is no doubt in my mind that Sirotkin is a fast racer, finishing 3rd in the F2 championship twice, there is no arguing that he was there because of the cash he brought in. So there they were, with 2 paid drivers and a progressively worse car. They finished last with 7 points, and after Lawrence Stroll's acquisition of the Force India team, they knew they had to change something. 2019 saw a fresh lineup consisting of rookie and 2018 F2 champion George Russell and Grand Prix winner Robert Kubica. Regulations have been put in place for the 2019 season to reduce dirty air and improve racing, simplifying the front wing and reducing the size of the barge boards among other changes. And pretty much every team was not only able to regain that lost performance but get even faster. There was an exception to the rule though. When Williams showed up with their toothpaste/Argentine flag car to preseason testing, which they wouldn't be able to get out of the pit lane for 2.5 days due to parts still being worked on at the factory, once the car was good to go, the pace was simply nowhere. On the first practice session of that year's Australian Grand Prix, the fastest Williams was 1.3 seconds slower than the next slowest car. And after qualifying 4 and 6 seconds off pole, they'll finish 2 and 3 laps down respectively the next day. Their 2019 car was slower than the 2018 one. The only highlight of the year was the single point scored by Kubica in an insane German Grand Prix, where 13 cars finished and 2 were given severe penalties. On the background though, Kubica and Russell were working on fixing that mess already. The 2020 contender was going to be a better car for the first time in 6 years. The 2020 season ground to a halt before even starting. The COVID pandemic put many teams at risk of disappearing, and if the choice was to go down with the ship or jump off and give the ship a fighting chance, the Williams family were forward-thinking enough to finally give in. For the past 2 decades, they had been running the team as if it were the late 1980s, but finally, after putting everything they could into it, they just couldn't do it anymore. It was time to let go. Totally. In August 2020, a few weeks after the season finally got going, the Williams family announced that a new era of Williams was going to start. US investment company Doralton Capital were going to be buying the team. This acquisition was by no means hostile, and what's more, they, for the moment, will retain the Williams name and the FW chassis name. The 2020 season didn't yield any points, but we can all collectively agree that it was a much better year for the Grove team. With such a tightly packed midfield, points for the backmarkers are rare, but with the duo of 2019 F2 runner-up and, let's be honest, a little bit of a paid driver Latifi, and once-in-a-generation talent Russell, who is on a timed contract to move up to Mercedes in the near future, they made the most out of the 2020 season, and many are predicting that they will not finish last for 2021. I've already spoken on this, but my opinion is that they will finish in either 8th or 9th position, and points are not a question of if, but of when they will come. This past 2020 has been the beginning of the upswing after hitting more than bedrock bottom in 2019, and the recent announcement that they will be much closer in partnership with Mercedes from this year on will hopefully mean a long and successful era to come for Williams. We have recently seen a giant rise back up after a management overhaul, a driver shakeup, and a philosophy change in McLaren. I'm excited to see what will become of Williams in the coming years. If you liked this video, don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, of course subscribe to Jab Motorsport, the link is in the description. Click the video on the right or on the left depending on what you want to watch if you want to continue in my channel, and I will see you all next week.